Welcome to A Champion's Journey podcast. I'm Matt Davidson. From an early age, I've had the privilege of learning from world champions and world-class performers, and I've always been fascinated by what drives them to the pinnacle of achievement. In this podcast, I'll interview high performers to learn more about the habits, rituals, tactics, and strategies which have aided them throughout the course of their journeys so that we can take those lessons and apply them to ours. The mission of A Champion's Journey podcast is to interview not only those who have stood on the top podium in arenas of high-level competition, but to learn from those who have conquered life's greatest challenges and have dared to live life on their own terms. And we are live. Mr. Breeden, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. It's a tremendous honor to have you here. I think of you as being one of the U.S. Army parachute team's aviators who's had one of the longest tenures as a pilot with the Golden Knights. Is that true?
It's very true. I've been so blessed to work with the team here and be part of our entire mission. And in 1997 is when I started with the team. I got a phone call when I was in Kwajalein. Says you can go two places. We're going to send you to either Maryland, a USAPAT flight detachment up there, or you can go back to Fort Bragg. I had asked to get to Fort Bragg because where my home is, my family, and didn't really want to move again. And he says, and I've also checked on the parachute team for you, and they'd like to have you. So I was like, you got to be kidding. Break my arm. So that phone call came at like 2 a.m. because they had forgotten the time difference.
Oh, right.
Over in the Pacific,
right.
So I was very excited to get that call.
Awesome. I can't wait to get into some of the details of your military and Army experience later on. But I wanted to ask how many years you've been flying, how many years flying for the Golden Knights Aviation Section, affectionately known as Team 6, and how many flight hours have you logged?
I think I'm a little over 12,300 or so hours, and but started with the parachute team in 1997. Joined the Army, delayed entry 1980, and went to flight training in 81, and graduated in June 82. So been flying a long time.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
42 years, something like that. So,
that's incredible.
Yeah. I'm very blessed, And
you still love it.
I love his passion, It's I used to get in trouble in school for drawing airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of listening to the math teacher and so on. So,
I would like to talk about your childhood, your upbringing, and your aviation inspiration, which you were just mentioning. I'm interested as to what your childhood was like, and I'd love for you to tell us about the different places where you grew up, about your parents, your school experience, and about eventually what inspired you to want to become an aviator.
Yep, sure thing. My dad's from Orange County, Virginia. Mom's from Kittery, Maine, and I had a great childhood growing up. I got a younger brother, and a younger sister. My sister's about 5 years younger than me. My brother's 2 years younger, and but we had a great time growing up. Dad was always involved. Played sports, played baseball, played football. Joined the band in elementary school. But music was my good time through elementary school and high school and then into college. Lived in several places. Used to travel back and forth to Maine every vacation. Spend time up in Maine at Mousom Lake with my cousins, uncles, and best times of our lives. Is great memories, growing up.
I love Maine and I love New Hampshire. I spent a bunch of time up there as a kid as well.
And we lived in Hampton, New Hampshire. My dad worked on the Navy Yard when we were up there. He was a printer, and my mother was an X-ray technician, and she got her training from the Army.
Oh, really?
So both my parents served. My dad was drafted. My mom volunteered, and she became an X-ray technician. And my dad was a clerk typist. And back when the Army had typewriters, and all the orders had to be done on ribbon and, banging those keys on that thing.
Yeah. You spent some time as a kid in Naples, Italy, too?
Yeah, Naples, Italy. My dad worked on the NATO base over there. It was printer for DOD. So we were there for 2.5 years, and then came back to Springfield, Virginia.
What was that experience like for you as a kid being over in a different country?
I have vivid memories of, looking at the window and looking way down the mountain. You could hear when they were playing soccer over there, people just love soccer. And you could hear the crowd miles away. You know when somebody scored.
Right.
And but the views were beautiful. We could see the Bay of Naples from our apartment building, and you could see Mount Vesuvius way in the distance.
Wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you play any soccer yourself?
No, I played football and baseball. Ran a little bit of track. My coach, he says, Ken, you run real fast, but it's all in the same place. So, they were trying to get me to be a little bit quicker, because
Right.
I was a receiver. So,
Okay.
yeah. But,
did you learn any lessons that applied to later on in life as your career as an aviator?
Absolutely. I mean, everything is team, so I played team sports. And the band is a big team, and it all evolved into, joining the Army, and everywhere you go, you can't do it by yourself, so you use your teammates and you depend on them. And if they depend on you, you help them out, so it's been good to me, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the things that I'm trying to impress on my 12-year-old daughter, that playing team sports will teach you those types of things that are
Right.
very valuable later on in life
That's
to
right.
be able to work and play well with others.
Yep.
You were a jazz saxophonist throughout your school years. What drew you to the saxophone as opposed to other musical instruments?
Well, my dad played the saxophone, and he encouraged us to join the band, and probably one of the best things I did as a kid was to be in the band and a concert band. I was in the marching band for a year. First 2 years of high school, I did the marching band, and second, my junior and senior year, I played ball. So if you can't do both, when you're when you're in high school.
Right.
So, but I did want to play some football. But I stayed in the jazz ensemble, and then when I went to George Mason University, I tried out for that jazz ensemble and became a tenor sax player for them. It was
Nice.
great. Yeah,
That's awesome.
big band sound.
Right.
There's different types of fusion, all kinds of music. It's a good time.
What jazz bands did you play in? You talked about some of them, and what were some of those experiences like for you? Do you remember any stories about particular bands that stick out more than other?
I think our when I was in junior high school, we had a band teacher named Mr. Watts, and he was also in the Redskins marching band, and but he was our band leader, and that's where he was a gentleman that really got us all hooked on music, because we had a pretty decent jazz ensemble back then. And then high school, we went to competitions, memorable moments. Blood, Sweat, and Tears was judges on one of them. But we had some other jazz ensembles in our school system up in Fairfax County. The Langley Jazz Ensemble was world renowned. They were making records, but they had a lot of kids that were kind of recruited to come in and play at that school.
Wow.
And most of them became professional musicians.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty cool when you're in the 70s and watching a rival high school making records back
Right.
then,
Yeah,
vinyl
that's-
records, so it's pretty cool.
That's impressive. So you had a lot of positive influence around you to help,
Yeah.
bring your level up and to inspire you, I'm
That's
sure.
right. Yeah.
Which jazz musicians were most inspirational and influential to you?
Oh man. Kenny G, Spyro Gyra, that type of music there is kind of smooth jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I like fusion jazz, but I've seen Boots Randolph play, many others, George Benson, his guitar, but I like all that kind of music there. So,
Did you listen to any of the classic jazz musicians like Miles Davis? Or
yeah, sure did.
yeah, I love his stuff.
Brecker Brothers, Miles Davis, lot of folks. Now I met the gentleman, one of the best bass players in the world. Met him in Skydive Chicago. He jumped out of our plane.
Oh, really?
Victor Wooten is his name, and if you haven't ever heard of him, look him up.
All right.
He can play that bass guitar.
Yeah, I will.
He's amazing, and his brother, the whole family plays, and they one of them is the keyboardist for the Steve Miller Band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
And but Victor's played with David Matthews, many others. You know, he's a teacher, and I kind of keep in touch with him once in a while. I'll just text him, say, how you doing? I'll send him a picture of the airplane or something like that. And he always returns. He lives in Nashville.
That's very cool.
He'll just text me back and say, hey, I'm doing good.
Nice. I just recently went to see Dave Matthews with Jen and Lauren, and
Cool.
and they always put on such a great concert.
Yep. His farm is just down the road from where my parents built their home in Gordonsville, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think he's got his studio out there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. Did you find that you learned anything that you could apply later on in life into your aviation career through music and learning to play the saxophone? And what were those things?
You know, you play guitar. You know that you have to have a certain amount of discipline. You know, if the music tells you to be loud, it tells you to be soft, crescendo, blah, blah, blah. You know, so you have to be, you can bring that all the way into aviation, a lot of other things you do, because it requires some discipline.
Discipline and finesse in certain situations, I'm sure. And
right.
I think for me, it also taught me, I think I was more inclined to the the art side of things, where architecture is also, you know, a side of that as well. And music for me really taught me that there's an underlying mathematical structure to the art. And I think understanding that has applications to, you know, lots of different things in life.
That's right. Yeah.
Now I'd like to move on to your military training and Army experience. What were warrant officer training and flight school like at Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel, Alabama, in the early 1980s?
It was awesome. You know, I was going to come into the Army in 1978, just a year after I graduated from high school. And I kind of wanted to be a surveyor, a construction surveyor. And I took the ASVAB test and so on, and I had all these MOSs that I could do, and I got cold feet. And I went back to doing my construction job, going to school at nighttime, and I was a carpenter. You know, I was a carpenter's apprentice with the up in the D.C. area.
Okay.
I worked on several buildings up there, and the last job I was on was the Washington Post newspaper plant, and it's in Springfield, Virginia. It was real close to my house. So, but I was on the job one day, and a F-4 was going into Andrews Air Force Base, and I said, "Man, I wish I was doing that. I'd just so much rather be flying than banging nails every day."
Right.
And although I did enjoy carpentry, it was, you know, the type of carpentry I did was form work and heavy construction, commercial construction, high rises, and a lot of concrete form work where you build the forms and then they pour concrete inside it to make the shape of the building or whatever structure you're doing. But anyway, the guy that I was working with says, "Well, man, you need to check out the Army. They got these guys called warrant officers, and they fly helicopters, and you only need a couple of years of school. Aren't you going to school at night? You almost got your degree." And honest to God, this is my Army story. I went to the recruiter on my way home from work, and I got over there, and his name was Sergeant First Class Shorey, and he had his khaki uniform on.
Oh, the sharp khaki uniform. That
sharp-looking khaki, and I'm like, man, you know, and I had my dirty jeans on and a old shirt, you know, form oil all over me and so on. And
which I'm sure was a common sight coming across the recruiter's office.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but anyway, he says, "Well, I can make you a crew chief. You know, I see you've taken the ASVAB before," and he says, "You know, it's tough to get guys in because it was street to seat back then. They called it high school to flight school. A little bit later on." And I said, "No, I kind of like to do the pilot thing, and I think I could probably do that." And he's like, "I'm going to help you do it, but please don't run out on me because it takes a lot of time.
Oh, right.
You got to take a fast test. You take the ASVAB. You have to do a Class 1 flight physical. But all in the end, Matt, it was worth it big time, you know, because 18 months later, I was flying a UH-1 helicopter in Alaska."
Wow, that's incredible. That's one of my favorite aircraft. That was the first one that I jumped out of down at the Fort Rucker Sport Parachute Club back in 1990.
It's a great machine. And but, you know, to take a guy like me, you know, BC student in high school, the Army opened many doors for me. And, you know, people always ask me, thank you for your service. You hear that a lot wherever you go. And I'm very proud to wear that uniform. And, I always tell the people back, thank you very much. The service has been very good to me and my family, So,
right. That has to mine as well.
Yeah, it's really been good to me, So
that's awesome.
It's sent me a lot of different places, but it's fed my family. It's kept a roof over my head. It's given me every opportunity that anybody could ask for, especially now,
Right.
I'm 65 and still helping out a little bit.
That's awesome.
So
yeah. Man, what a dream come true.
It is.
I try to find ways where I can, still help out as well, because I just love the Army.
Mm-hmm.
I love the team. I love the camaraderie that comes out of it. It's more of a family, type
That's
of
right.
organization.
And back to the gentleman that I was working with, had we not just had that simple conversation, it would have never happened.
Wow.
Right. How you put things together,
Mm-hmm.
So, and one of the things too is I'm pretty outgoing, and I'll talk a lot to
Mm-hmm.
people and tell stories and so on. And sometimes it gets me in trouble because the guys are like, "Come on, Ken, we got to go."
I've heard that a few times.
Yeah. We got to go. So, but anyway, it's really been, it's given me the blessings beyond recognition.
Well, that's great. The team needs people like you to be able to talk to people on show site, because it really connects people that are in the Army to civilians who might not otherwise have any kind of contact with people in the military service.
Exactly true. And I've had people come up to me as moms and dads, kids, and they got their kids with them and so on. And I said, I'll tell my little story and where I came from. I wasn't an A+ student. You don't have to be.
Right, I wasn't.
All you have to do is just apply and have that dream and fulfill it.
And the Army's
going to let you go and
right.
do it. So
yeah, I was going to say they give you plenty of reasons to start applying yourself once you
right.
have your foot in the door too.
And I was like everybody else. I did a lot of running, back then, and that kept me in pretty decent shape and so on. And now I'm trying,
Right. Yeah, I just want to backtrack just for a moment, because I'm interested to hear more about maybe if you can expound, if there's anything to expound on in the story about where you saw the F-4 Phantom flying over. Were you working up high in the high-rise building, or?
I was actually on the ground, and we were actually doing some measurements on how much concrete was needed for a certain form, and then that thing screamed overhead. And I looked up, and like I say, the gentleman I was talking, he spent 2 years in the Navy. Okay. That's how he knew about warrant officers. Gotcha. And he said, yeah, check that out sometimes, And he I won't do it now, but he made the sound of a Huey starting up, boom. Oh yeah. And he said, I don't know why they sound like that. It sounds funny. It's a funny sounding engine. It's a turbine engine, And,
right.
But I used to see them all the time where I lived in Springfield, Virginia. They flew out of Davison Army Airfield.
I love the sound they make.
They would fly pretty low level down the highway on their way into Fort Belvoir. And later on, when I got my class dates and passed my physical, did the work that you need to do to go into the Army, my dad says, why don't you just go on down there and get yourself a visitor's pass and see if somebody will let you look at a helicopter, So, and I did. So put a suit and tie on one day. And back in the day, you could just go and get a visitor's pass if you had a ID, show them your registration. And they would say, where are you going? He said, well, you need to go to base ops. But I went down there, and there was a CW3 in there. His name was Mr. Decker. And he says, you got your class date? I said, I do. And I had my little printout from the recruiting station in the Army, warrant officer candidate class, And this date, he says, you want to go get in the simulator?
Wow.
So I went up to the simulator, and those guys treated me like a warrant officer candidate.
That's awesome.
But they put me in there and let me get a few hours of simulator time before I went into basic training. So
that at least gave you a basic understanding of.
I took I took an air navigation class in college. It was just wasn't a degree program or anything. It was just air nav, and I learned how to use the E6B. It's a little flight computer for doing navigation. Now it's all GPS, but,
Right.
But back then you could still use the E6B too. And, but I did do that, and it helped me a lot when I went to flight training, so, but I enjoyed basic training, all you had to do is when that drill sergeant said, go over there, you just go over there. But we had 2 or 3 guys that wouldn't do that. So they got all the attention.
Oh, right.
So
that's good because it keeps it off of you.
Exactly. So when he said jump, I jumped over there, so and, I very rarely got chewed out or anything because I did what I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that was the same thing with me,
and
too.
I love shooting the weapon. When we got to go to the range, that was good times there. It was good times. It was an M16.
Right.
I think it's M4 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but anyway, I enjoyed that a lot.
So I think that's one of the things I was going to ask you, what you found most challenging about training and what advice you would have to offer aspiring Army warrant officers and aviators or people going through basic training. But it sounds like one of those elements, and I'll let you speak to the others, but one of those elements might be, finding ways to prepare or expose yourself to what, you might be finding during training, like you said, the simulator, or taking the navigation course, for example.
Exactly. So, my biggest challenges actually was trying to keep up with some of the other folks, how fast they could run. And, I wasn't a real fast runner, but, I got myself to where you just have to practice it to be good at it. So everything that you do, so practice helps you get better.
Right.
It's never perfect, but it helps you get a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. Try to be 1% better every day, right?
Yep.
My wife recently went through warrant officer training and went to flight school, and she was saying that during her class they kind of dialed back the some of the, I guess, hazing-like games, not hazing, but hazing-like games that they would do. Did you experience much of that when you went through?
Yeah, it was tough because when I went through, I had no experience. I didn't know what starch was. I never had spit shined a boot. So what I did was I put myself close to a couple of the E5s, E6s that had been around for a while.
Oh, they had some prior service before they went.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, we had quite a few guys with E5, E6, a couple of E7s going to flight training because back then the Army was short on helicopter pilots, pretty bad. And I had no way of getting through WAC D, Warrant Officer Candidate School, without help. So we went back to team. And, when it came for inspections, some of those guys would come out of their cube and they would help old Ken Breeden there, young Ken Breeden, try to figure out how to get it done because I had no idea how to spit shine a boot. And you had to do it. You had to get it right. 7-inch collars on the bed and so on,
So you had to have everything dress right, dress
all the time,
like that.
socks all rolled up. That was very challenging for me. And the day that we had what they call a phase inspection, they went right down one side of the room, busted every other one. I was the one that got busted.
Oh yeah.
Every other one they did.
Oh,
but it was just a game to see to check resiliency.
Right, to see how you handle
and it and to see if your teammates would help you get ready for the next one. Because they do a prison toss when they come through really? There. They throw everything around. They look at it and they throw it on the ground, and then it's up to you to get it clean and back in the locker where it's all supposed to be. And
but it teaches you that discipline and attention to detail.
Exactly. It's the you can equate it to doing a pre-flight on an airplane. So if you got attention to detail, that's the training to make you look for problems or faults with an aircraft. You have to first find problems in your locker, and all the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's I hear people asking why do they do this, and that's the way I understand it.
Yeah. After a year of that, and I went home, I was driving my family crazy because every time I would find something, I would put it where it's grounded. I would put it and make it line up with something. And my mother's like, "What are you doing?" So
I still have that. My daughter's like, I'll see a speck in the middle of the floor and I'll go to vacuum it up, or I'll have her. She's like, "Oh, Dad, you're like Hawkeye." Why?
Yeah. So, but again, all that came together in the end, and we had fun too. Sometimes I remember one morning, the TAC officer would come in and just half an hour before wake up time, just start hollering. But what happened on this particular day, the other flight, this blue flight, they put their hats on. Of course, in the dark, they look black. And they put their warrant officer candidate brass vertical, made it look like warrant officer brass. And it was like, got us up, all of us running down the road in our skivvy shorts. And then there were no TAC officers anymore. And one of the guys in my flight was like, I think we've been had. Here we are running down the street,
But it's those kind of times of shared suffering where it creates camaraderie.
That's right.
Those kind of times that you remember.
You're not the only one doing it. You got, in my flight, it was 40 other guys, so at that time.
And a flight, just for people that don't know, that's what they called the section or the unit that you were in.
Yeah, that's right. So they had, everybody had a different color hat. My flight was maroon flight.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was good times,
Nice. I think now they do T-shirts. I think like Jen's, hers was orange, so they do T-shirts now, but they still stick with a similar format.
Yep.
I just wanted to add one thing about we were speaking about Fort Novosel. The base was recently renamed in honor of Michael J. Novosel, who was awarded the Medal of Honor, the U.S. Army's highest award for heroism and gallantry for his heroic deeds in Vietnam. Chief Novosel was also a pilot for the Army Golden Knights, along with his son. Did you ever have the chance to meet either of them?
His son was actually one of our platform instructors when I was in flight school.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Very cool.
Yep. And at that time, I didn't know the significance of Mr. Novosel, but I do now, And I believe that when he passed away, we flew an airplane into Andrews, I think, to go to the funeral up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was pretty honorable.
Yeah, I just read his memoir, Dust Off.
That's right.
And it's an incredible book. Some great stories in there. He just seemed like an awesome guy.
Dust Off pilot, saved many lives, and really put himself at risk.
Right. Yeah. There's some stories in that book that he talks about the amount of fire and the different situations they were in when he was in there, getting wounded soldiers out.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Incredible guy. For anyone who's in the Fayetteville, Fort Liberty area, you go travel to the Golden Knights headquarters team. There's the theater is named after him, and in the memorial room there's a bust of him there. So anybody who'd like to go check that out, you're welcome to. After graduating flight school, like you said, you were a new pilot flying Hueys in Alaska. What was that experience like?
It was great. When I got the assignment to Alaska, and here I am, a brand new W-1 in the Army, brand new in the Army anyway. I had visions of igloos, and typical, and I found out how good that assignment was when people were going, how did you get Alaska for your first tour? Even if we're talking people trying to get Alaska their whole careers. And the other blessing that I had was I went to Anchorage at Fort Richardson. The weather's a lot warmer down there. It gets cold in the wintertime, but it rarely gets to 40 below zero.
Jeez.
And Anchorage is a beautiful city. And in fact, we got a team just coming back from there right now.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the social media stuff.
They did the air show up there this weekend. I got to do that air show twice, but Alaska was one of the best tours I've had. I've had all my tours have been great, and it's what I tell people too. You make it what it is,
right?
And but I love to be outdoors. I love to fish.
So I assume you did some salmon fishing up there?
I did a lot of salmon fishing. I used to get in trouble because it'd be a school night or a work night, and the sun doesn't go down.
Right.
So you look at your watch, and it's 12:30.
Oh, get in trouble for the crew rest?
Well, I'd get in trouble for my wife because I was out fishing. She's worried about me. There's no cell phones back then, Right. So I had a good friend up there, Gary Heisaw, and we used to fish a lot, and you didn't have to go far. The salmon would be in the Ship Creek or just up the road towards Palmer, and but beautiful country, the mountains, and I was in quarters, and I was on post, and my quarters were right. I was on the edge where my view out my front door was Arctic Valley in the mountains.
Wow, that's incredible. Jen and I went up there a couple of years ago, and it was just everywhere you look, just incredible beauty, mountains.
Yep.
We went up to Whittier, very beautiful up there.
Seward, the Kenai Peninsula down there is just beautiful. Then if you go north, it gets flattened out a little bit. Then you get towards, Fairbanks area, and you got Mount McKinley up there, Denali.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you explore Denali?
Spent 4 years up there and went by Denali all the time. And we used to fly the Hueys through Windy Pass going to Fairbanks. But we did everything but go to Denali because it's one of the things I regret.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'd love to get up there too. We weren't able to make it the last trip. Did you ever take any flights on any of the Bush aircraft up there that would land on a glacier or anything like that?
I used to fly the helicopter and land on the glaciers.
Oh,
up there.
wow.
So we trained with the infantry up at Golconda Glacier, Gokona Glacier, and we did snowfield landings up there, and it was pretty risky flying.
Yeah, if you could talk about some of the challenges there, I'd love to hear some stories about that.
I tell people, Alaska was just amazing because, we didn't have the weather products that we have now. So when there's a few, we spent a few days like down in a tundra area or something like that because the snow would come and we couldn't fly any further. We had to land. So
by weather products, you mean
like the Air Force weather back then?
Okay.
We didn't have the big visuals that you have now.
Gotcha.
Real time.
Right.
So we'd have to go on a forecast. Everything we did up there,
which, as we know, sometimes forecasts aren't always as accurate as they say they are.
Guys do the best they can, know. But when you're flying from Fairbanks or from Fort Richardson to Fairbanks, you got to get through those passes. Sometimes there's fog in there, and sometimes it'll be snowing. Sometimes the winds will be high. So it presents some challenge, but most of the time it was pristine, beautiful, crystal clear, and then sometimes it was stark terror. I wish I was on the ground right now instead of in the air, But I tell people sometimes just jokingly, I came out with a really tall luck bag and a little short skill bag, 'cause that was my first tour. So it was a good time. And again, we flew together and we flew some night vision goggles up there because they were new. And but thank goodness, we had all those tools to get the mission done.
Yeah. Now I take it at that time you were able to fly IFR, but I was reading about in Mr. Novosels's memoirs that they didn't have that capability when they were flying in Vietnam. But I would take it by the 80s, you guys had that.
We could fly IFR, but most of the things we did were visual flight rules. Yeah, just because of the mission. And but on occasion we could go IFR. A helicopter doesn't have a lot of range, so you'd have to have ox tanks in if you're going from Fort Richardson to Fairbanks.
Okay.
Yeah, but mostly visual.
And you had to deal with icing and things of that nature too, I take it?
Sometimes it's too cold for icing up there, so that's a good thing. Yeah, but I've flown into ice crystals that almost blind you, because you got ice crystals coming through. So it's just kind of snow up there, and the sun's glittering off of it. But it was just a beautiful place to fly, and especially went down in the Homer area, Kenai, and I used to fly into Whittier. Sometimes there's a pipeline that runs from Whittier up into Anchorage, and we would take people and put them in the back, and they were surveilling the condition of the pipeline.
Okay,
that was a fun mission.
I'll bet. Yeah, so beautiful up there.
Yeah.
Your next duty station was Fort Hood. If you would, I'd like for you to talk about your drive there from Alaska. It sounded like an adventure from what you mentioned in your bio.
Yeah. So back then we had two little girls, and one was Bethany was a month old, and Janelle was just 2. And we took off up the Glen Highway crying, leaving Alaska to go to Fort Hood. We had some leave in between going to Illinois and Virginia, but it was a great adventure once we got over having to leave, because we spent 4 years up there. And we got on the Alaska Highway, and one of the things you do that back then is you get the milepost. It's a big, thick, it's type of a trip ticket, if you will, like a AAA book.
Okay.
It's not AAA, but it's called the Milepost, and it tells you where all the gas stations are. You never left a gas station behind you without filling it up. And there was, back then, it was 500 miles of gravel still.
Wow.
And so the car took a beating on that trip. But
And what kind of car did you have?
I had a Pontiac Grand Le Mans, or a Pontiac Le Mans station wagon.
Wow.
And with the wood paneling.
Right. So not necessarily built for off-road driving.
Not at all, So, but it did well. It got us home, and I built a little bug guard for the front of it, and a rock guard to hopefully keep the windshield from cracking.
Right.
And because just about everybody that used to drive that road, the windshield would be broken.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it was a great adventure. Got to see all kinds of wildlife: caribou, bear. We saw eagles, lots of bald eagles, and just an adventure drive for a young couple with two little ones.
Yeah,
and they were great because they have ice heaves in the road, even in Canada, and it's kind of bumpy, and it just puts the kids to sleep.
Oh, right.
So they did well as babies going down the road there.
Oh, good. And that was before all the devices we have now to distract the kids in the back seat.
That's right.
I'll bet you saw some moose too.
Saw a lot of moose.
Had to be careful about that.
Moose. Yep, that's right. And moose seem friendly, but they can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've heard those things can do a lot of destruction to a car if you hit them too. It's
That's
usually
right.
not the car that wins out.
That's right. Yeah. They're big. They're bigger than a horse. So.
At Fort Hood, you mentioned in your bio you spent 2 years fixing Apaches, Blackhawks, and OH-58s. I assume then that you took the maintenance track?
Yes, I was. I went maintenance in Alaska. I was allowed to do that. Actually, just before I made W-2, I went to AMOC, the Aviation Maintenance Officer course down at Fort Eustis, and always hung around the hangar. I knew it was my calling. My dad fixed stuff all the time. I grew up fixing things, so I knew that's what I wanted to do. And they sent me to AMOC. I got to go back to Alaska, finish that out, and then when I went to Fort Hood, I was a maintenance officer for Alpha Troop. All I had was 12 58s, OH-58s to work on. There was C models. And then I was pulled into the maintenance shop under the maintenance officer, and I did all the work orders to fix, repair the Apache. Apaches were brand new. It was a real challenge to keep those things flying in the beginning, but an awesome helicopter.
What were some of the biggest challenges?
Avionics, really, and the Army. That helicopter, the Alpha model, when it came out, was it's a very lethal helicopter, but we had challenges maintaining with the supply system, figuring it out, and so on.
Okay,
but we got the job done.
Nice. Recently my dad flew his Cessna 182 down to Rayford and parked it in the hobby hangar there, Miss Billy's hobby hangar, and I was able to help him do a little bit of maintenance on there. I'm not very mechanically inclined, but I've been learning some things over the years. I had a great time helping him out a little bit. I didn't do a whole lot, but it was fun just to change some spark plug wires and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges at Fort Hood when I was there is we had a storm and a microburst come through there, and it rolled over and damaged about 200 helicopters on Fort Hood and Gray Army Airfield. It was a huge storm. And the last 8 months I was there before I got picked up for the fixed-wing course was we were repairing and getting all those aircraft flyable again. And because its blades were broken, some of them were on their sides. It bent drive shafting and so on.
Wow.
So it was a big job to get it done. They actually set up a facility in Killeen, Texas, to put them on jigs, make sure they were straight, because everything on a helicopter's got to be aligned, or it'll vibrate. You'll have problems. So, but we got quite a few of them back up before I left, and that's when I got fixed wing course and then on over to Berlin, Germany. Another great tour.
Yeah, I'd like for you to talk about your time in Berlin. And actually, I wanted to ask you another question about how much flying were you able to do during those 2 years, in addition to your duties as a maintenance officer?
We flew a lot, and a lot of that flying was at nighttime. Got a lot of goggle time in Texas because the Apache, the tactics on that were the deep attack, and so we did a lot of training out west of Fort Hood, Terrell County area. Beautiful flying, high desert, with the mesas and so on down there. It's kind of near the Rio Grande down that way.
Wow, but that is
Terrell
beautiful.
County. It was great flying, very challenging. But we learned to fly at night, and it was a lot of night flying. And I was in the C Model 58, and so usually just running around and doing that scout mission.
So is that did that entail a lot of low level flying?
Mostly NOE and low level flying.
Oh wow,
that's right.
And doing it at night, that was
at nighttime. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I'll bet that was very challenging.
It was, and I had an observer that flew with me, and back then they had enlisted observer that would help read that map for you.
Okay.
Again, we didn't have the GPS.
Wow.
And yes, we got lost sometimes and misoriented. We had to figure it out.
Did you have any super challenging times where you were running low on fuel and nervous about whether you'd get back in time or anything like that?
Yes. Yes. So that aircraft has a 20-minute light on it, and you don't ever want to go there. That's one thing I can't do anymore. But there's been a couple times where, this is where we're at. We need to start getting back here, getting towards fuel, and you might have a light come on as you're putting it down into the fuel, the FARP there, the forward area refueling area.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you try not to do that.
Right. Yeah, I'll bet seeing that light go off makes the anxiety level
you
go
don't
up
wanna,
a bit.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And before we move on to your experience in Germany, I would like to ask you if you can describe the different aviation tracks which Army aviators can take for those that might be listening who are aspiring aviators.
So the tracks that you can take now, and a lot of them, like the instructor pilot, and that where you're teaching your peers to fly and giving check rides, continuation training and so on. And then you can track safety. Be a safety officer for your organization, and you can track maintenance as well. And then there's another one now. It's TAC Ops. I'm not as familiar with it as some of the newer guys are, but it's more of a tactical, working in a BOC or an operations center.
Okay.
And it's a different track that they can do as well. So
yeah,
I chose maintenance because I knew that's what my column was going to be.
Right. And I would imagine that most people, have a certain skill set or maybe a set of interests where that it might direct them down that path.
That's right.
Or, one of those different paths.
Usually they'll look at their peers and see you'll kind of gravitate to the track that you want.
Nice. Yeah, I think Jen's talking about wanting to lean towards a maintenance track as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your experience now about as an aviator surveilling the Berlin Wall. That sounds super exciting. What was that like?
When I got to Berlin, I had no idea. I've heard of the Berlin Wall. There was a lot of things going on back then with President Reagan and Gorbachev, and who became good friends, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to Berlin, I was shocked how close we lived to the wall, and it was no graffiti. It was a dangerous area. Even though the political wall had fallen in '89, I got there early '90, but the mission was still going on.
Really?
East German guards was on their side with their AKs. We were on the other side patrolling with helicopters and with some of the mission folks over there that were stationed in Berlin. And we kind of did that for 2 years after the political fall, and continued to surveil it. It was just there. And then there was open spots in the wall where you could go across. But when I first got there, you had to be on flag orders and you had to go through the central part of Germany to get into West Germany. Still pretty closed down, and you had to travel on the duty train at night.
Wow.
But the flying was amazing. So when I got there, of course, you get a lot of training because you can't have an incident, and the wall it's not always real clear on what side you're on. There's a lot of exclaves and enclaves of how it's built. And so you had to pretty much memorize the wall flight and what sector you were in and so on. But basically the job was to go out and just fly that area to exercise the right to fly in that area. But helicopters had to stay on the inside. We had a mission that flew a 25-mile ring around the Berlin Air Safety Center. And that was done in the Pilatus Porter. And you've jumped out of the Pilatus Porter.
Oh, yeah.
The same two aircraft that the Golden Knights ended up getting were in Berlin.
Oh, really?
That's
so
right.
Chances are maybe you flew one or both of them while you were...
I flew both of those aircrafts in Berlin.
Wow.
Porter. Yeah.
That's really cool.
253 and 254.
Nice.
And then when our mission went away in that particular airplane, Joey Starr from the Golden Knights came over to Berlin, and one of my additional duties was to get the wings off of those things, fly them down to Ramstein, get the wings off, put them on a C-5, and then come on over here. And the guys putting them together up in Dover, Delaware.
Wow.
And then I flew them with Mr. Messiter, Tom Messiter, and he helped me fly them down to, he basically rode with me and navigated while I flew the airplanes from Dover to the Golden Knights.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah.
What a cool full circle story.
It is. It's incredible. It's incredible. And that is really was probably my foot in the door to the Golden Knights.
Okay.
My flying the Porter in Berlin, because the team had them at that time. It was 7 years later. And I knew they had the Golden Knights, but I wasn't focused on the Golden Knights every day,
right,
until I got orders to come here. And but Berlin was great flying. And I flew a little bit of King Air over there, the C-12, U-21. We had U-21. And the Gulf War started when I was over there. And one of the airplanes that we had, our C-12 had RNAV capability. They all do now. But they actually had to take that aircraft from us and went to Heidelberg. And then they gave us a U-21 to replace that, because we just didn't need the C-12 every day.
Okay.
Basically, it was to take the command and general around, VIPs and so on.
What was your transition like from rotary wing to fixed wing?
It was a challenge for me, because I was wanting to slow down all the time. You got to let the helicopter. They call it a brisk walk when you're hovering. You don't want to go too fast. And when you come into land, you're actually adding power. You're pulling the collective up, and you're transitioning from flight into hover. In an airplane, you have to keep it flying, So you reduce power, but you let it go onto the runway, right?
Okay.
So I had challenges in the beginning. Yeah, I was trying to figure that out, but I had good instructors over there.
So in Germany was where you made that transition?
Germany is basically where I flew my first fixed wing aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah. The Porter was the first aircraft I flew a lot, quite a bit. So.
Is that a pretty forgiving platform? It seems like it's got a lot of, because of the long wingspan, it seems like.
The Porter was probably the most challenging aircraft I ever flew.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a tail dragger.
Okay.
It's got a lot of power, and it's short takeoff and landing. So generally, tail dragger aircraft, they tend to want to ground loop. So you have to fly that aircraft till it's stopped. And it very low crosswind limit, so 15 knots max.
Wow.
So got to be careful, but I love that aircraft. Yeah, it's fun to fly.
I remember, I had a great time, jumping out of them and, just riding around in them on the flight's altitude. But I can remember one time Bob Giacone, Mr. Giacone, was super high winds out at Yuma, Arizona, where we were doing our winter training, and we were out at Desert One, where we used to do the style and accuracy.
I remember, yeah.
And he took it off in the cul-de-sac, just the width of the cul-de-sac. It was, the winds were that high.
Absolutely.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I came in from a mission one day in the aircraft in Berlin, and we had this as a procedure. But I says, hey, I can't take the runway today. I'm going to have to land on the taxiway. There was a perpendicular taxiway that was about maybe 400 feet long, and the winds were like 30.
Wow.
So, ground speed was probably 25. So I landed. It was almost, it was so short, it was almost in your backyard.
Wow.
Yeah. but then I had to taxi it to parking,
Oh, right.
So you just have to be careful. And so that aircraft will try to lift at about 40, 44 knots, something like that. So taxi real slow.
Yeah, I'll bet you had to be really careful.
Yeah.
Then after that, you did some flying for VIPs out of Simmons Army Airfield outside of Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, North Carolina. Who were some of the more memorable VIPs you've flown?
General Shelton. It was great, man. Always used to enjoy flying him. He was always, hey, Chief, how's it going today? And real relaxing. Probably my favorite guy, General Shacknow. And they just named a street after him here on Fort Liberty, which is pretty cool. Because I was just asking our new Colonel Wilson, if he knew him. And he said, I do. And so he had some stories, but General Shacknow used to get on the helicopter in Berlin because he was the commanding general there. And he would say, hey, Chief, you think you can find where we're going today? So he was a fun guy. And then he came to Bragg, and I got to fly him at Fort Liberty a couple times, take him different places, and many others, So, but those two I remember. General Shelton flew with us quite a bit right before he retired. He did some jumping with his, is it the MC4, the big parachute?
Yeah, at the time, I think he was jumping that. I remember when he was out at Rayford making some of those jumps. Yep. And he also presented us with our MSM awards one year after the 1998 World Cup championships, and man, it was just he was a great guy. And now his statue is down at the U.S. Special Operations Museum in downtown Fayetteville.
That's very cool.
Yeah. You also did a tour of duty in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. What was that experience like, and what was your mission there?
Another great tour. I got a call one day. I was headed to Korea. I was about 3 months from going to Korea, and I got a call from the Department of Army. They used to call it DA. It's called Human Resources now, HRC. Mm-hmm. And said, hey, what do you think about a job out in Kwajalein? I'd never heard of it. And I said, where is it? And it says, it's in the Marshall Islands. And immediately, my blue water light came on, and then I was thinking, it's a 2-year tour. And I said, I'll do it. At the time, I didn't know that the pets would have to go into quarantine in Hawaii for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So my wife wasn't all about that. So I did it all others, 18 months. But it was a great assignment. A lot going on in Kwajalein. It's now Reagan Missile Range. My job over there wasn't so much flying. I did fly twice a week. It was kind of like an airline. We were taking contractor personnel, technicians from Buckles Army Airfield up to Roy Namor. Up, I think it was Dias Army Airfield is what it's called up there, and we would take about 250 people up there every day, and then I flew the morning missions, first 3 loads going up there, and then another crew would get on the airplane and fly a noon mission to take mail and food and so on up there. And it's about a 70-mile flight, and then in the afternoon, another crew would go pick up all those people that went to work in the morning, because everybody lived at down on Kwajalein. Okay. But a lot of things going on there, space tracking, all kinds of things going on there. It was a good tour, But my job was to evaluate the safety program for the contractor, and I was assistant GFR over there, and it was a lot of fishing, and a lot of work too, So every day we were at surveilling safety and making sure we had checklists we had to go through and so on. Okay. And that was, but I got in shape over there. I ran, I rode my bike all the time, and fished, and it was a good, great tour. What did that help to? I guess it helped to maybe foster your love for deep sea fishing. Did you do quite a lot of that over there? That's where I started. That's where and I had a guy come down the hallway one day. He says, "Hey, my name's Jim Landgraf." I said, "Nice to meet you, Jim." He says, "Hey, how'd you like to go fishing with me this afternoon?" And I'm like, and it started right there. We went out there. I caught some mahi, then it was tuna, And then, the lures that you use over there are pretty expensive. They're cast resin. And that was my hobby. I started that. That's how I kept myself kind of going over there. I just, because I really missed my family,
Right.
It was traumatic, long time. But we had a great full-bird colonel there that says, hey, I'm going to give you a DSN line at your house. You can call once a week and talk to your family for half an hour. Pretty nice, so.
That was before cell phones.
And there was no internet,
right.
That type of thing.
Yeah, I'll bet that was tough. It's not, only being able to communicate with your family once a week.
Right. And that was at the time I was there, it was like the infancy of AOL, like I had a disc with AOL 1.0 or something like that.
Super slow dial-up stuff.
Yeah, modem.
Right.
Making all the noise and carrying on. But I got to call once a week, so that was good. And I kept myself with good friends over there, and fished and worked on boats and stuff like that. I was a boat mechanic, really.
Wow.
Over there in my spare time.
Nice. Did you ever catch any marlin or anything like that?
I did. I caught 2 over there.
Wow.
So the first one was about 160 pounds.
Wow.
It was a black marlin. Got pictures of that. And I caught him on my own lure, which is really cool.
How long did it take you to reel him in?
About 40 minutes.
Wow.
And then I caught a striped marlin that was about half its size. It was probably about maybe 80 pounds. Took me an hour and a half on that one.
Jeez.
He was stripping the line all the time. But I got to see things people never see in their lifetime. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of pilot whales in the lagoon or just outside the lagoon. And I've seen whale shark, lots of sharks, gray reef sharks, different types. I've seen whales, and I think there were humpback whales on their migration.
Wow.
So, in the water over there's pristine blue. And I never scuba dived over there.
No?
Which I regret because, it's some of the best scuba diving in the world there. And the reef is magnificent. The walls and really go into the deep. And then the sister ship of the Bismarck, the Prince Eugen, is in the lagoon over there.
Okay.
So it's upside down, but it's a very heavily dived ship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Do you remember Andrew Morgan? He's a full-bird colonel now. He was, for a time, associated with the team as a medical officer, and he went on to become an astronaut.
I remember. I do know who of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
don't know him well.
I believe he's in command over there right now. I think he's
Really?
getting toward the end of his command there. But yeah, he spent. I think he was the longest person who was in the military that was on the International Space Station. I can't remember exactly the number of days, but he was up there for a while, and yeah, I just did some incredible things.
I'm pretty sure he's been to a couple of our reunions, right? And spoken.
Yes.
Spoken. I know who he is. Yes. Don't know him well, but man, I'd be a good man to know.
Yeah, he's a great guy. When he was here in Southern Pines a couple of years ago, I think we went and saw him. We knew he was going to be in the area, and we went to the U.S. Special Forces and Special Operations Museum downtown, and he spoke there as well. And we brought Lauren to see him there. Yeah, and he's just an incredible guy, nice guy. And there's a great documentary on, I'm not sure I can't remember which network it is, but it's about his time up at the International Space Station. They had to repair one of the I think it was a filter, an AC unit or something like that, and it was just the challenges they had with that is quite incredible. But I'm sure, if you're interested in doing a search on them, you'll come up with some interesting stuff there. That's interesting sidebar anyway.
Very cool. And you think he's in command at Kwajalein now?
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I've had kind of an aspiration lately, and I don't know if I'll carry through with it. But you can't go there just to go there. You have to have a sponsor.
Okay.
So I should email him and say, hey, could you sponsor me for a week?
Right.
Bring my wife. I'd love my wife to be able to see it, see what I got to see.
Yeah, that would be incredible. What was your time in Korea like?
Korea was great. I got to Korea. I got over there. I was pretty heavy when I got over there because it was during Christmas time.
Okay.
Put my uniform on and stretching at the buttons, and I said, you know what, buddy? You're a CW4 that needs to get in shape. So I started walking Then I started running. Then I started running and swimming. I lost 35 pounds over there in a year. So Korea got me to where I didn't have to worry about the PT test. I could compete with my crew chiefs a little bit during that time, and when I got back, I felt really good, and I was able to do that for about 7 years. I hurt my knee, but Korea was a great experience. I flew the Havilland Dash 7, and it was an ARL mission. It's a kind of a reconnaissance mission up on the border, back and forth, and we just did our job up there, and would come back, and it was good flying. So I flew 2-3 times a week. And I had that short timers calendar, putting X's on every day when it went by, because I was, ready to come home when it was over with. But
it was a good tour?
Unaccompanied, okay. Yeah. But it was a good tour. And,
so it gave you the time that you needed to get yourself back in shape and to focus on some things like that. Did you ever see anything, anybody try to get cheeky getting across the border or anything like that?
When I was there, it was uneventful, really. The whole year I was there, there's not a whole lot happened. And but
it's always a good thing.
That's right. And of course, I got home, and it wasn't long after that when 9/11 came through. And it got busy over there then too.
Right.
So I think just the world was a little bit crazy. It's never been the same.
Yeah.
So, but Korea was a good tour. I enjoyed it. Just I had a little car over there, so I didn't go very far. Sometimes the guys would joke and say, "Hey, let's go show Ken where the front gate is." Because I stayed on base,
right?
I did my running, kind of stayed to myself. And,
yeah.
Because I had to get rested for that night mission. It was a long mission. They were 8 hours long.
Oh wow!
You flew all night long.
So were you on reverse schedule the whole time?
Pretty much, yeah. And I was a battalion maintenance officer over there, but I had an E7, Sergeant Shavers, outstanding soldier, and I'd go in there. Hey, what can I do today? He says, Mr. Breeden, this is take care of. This was good. And he just, typical NCO.
That's awesome. Help make it easy on you.
He just, Chief, you're good. I got that.
That's awesome.
He was great. Yeah. And made that tour all that much better, so he was just a great soldier. I'm glad he was there, because he handled a lot of stuff.
That's great when you have non-commissioned officers like that really, take charge and handle, those kind of things, take the initiative.
He was a soldier that he had been there for a few years, so he continued to extend and so on, and it helped him, and it certainly helped the unit. Definitely helped me.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So from there, you went to the Golden Knights from Korea?
That's right.
I
came back to the Golden Knights from Korea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was I started my second tour.
Okay.
So
how long was your first tour?
First tour was 30 months. And then they said, we're supposed to give you 36 months. I said, no, go ahead and just send me to Korea. But can I put in a 4187 to come back? He says, yeah, we'll see what we can do. They can't tell you.
Right.
But about 6-7 months into my Korea tour, the gentleman called me from DA and says, hey, you're going back to the Knights. Does it sound okay? I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Yeah, so it worked out.
Nice, and it was worked out for us too. We really appreciated you flying over there for us, and we knew that anytime you're in the cockpit, we were going to have a great day. We were going to fly lots of loads for competition training or whatever the case was. One of the times I'd like to talk about was when I had the good fortune of jumping out of your aircraft into the Pentagon for the Army 10-miler. And but I wanted to ask you, it seems like that might have been another full circle moment for you, because you said that your father worked as a printer in the Pentagon for 37 years. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, one of my greatest memories, greatest highlights of my time on the team was jumping into that and, sitting under parachute over the center of the Pentagon. And I remember as we were, flying around, just watching the sun come up over the horizon and, all the monuments and that kind of thing. But I was just wondering, did thoughts of your dad cross your mind as you were flying over the Pentagon?
All the time. Yeah. And, he lived vicariously through everything I did. He loved that I was, joined aviation. And I shared all those stories with him. And one of my biggest regrets is not getting an airplane and renting an airplane sometime and taking him for a ride because he's gone, So, but I really regret that not taking my dad for an airplane ride. But I don't do the civilian airplane thing.
Oh, right.
I'm always flying, flying for work.
Yeah. So you want to do something else once you're there. You're not flying for work.
Yeah. But my dad was always in my mind flying, and so it's good stuff.
Was there any one lesson that your father taught you that stands out above the rest that really sticks with you?
Absolutely. Keep a cool head. There's no need in having a temper, and take the high road. Always take the high road. And sometimes I haven't, but I try. So but definitely take that from him.
And that's great advice.
But that was a very decent man. Yeah. Good man.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Going back to that jump over the Pentagon, like I said, I have vivid memories of that day flying over the sights of D.C. as the sun crested the horizon while listening on the headset to you communicating with ATC or air traffic control in one of the most highly trafficked and well-monitored airspaces in the country. I was extremely impressed by your professionalism on that flight and in how well you handled what seemed like an overwhelming amount of communications traffic. Was that challenging for you, or was it just another day in the office?
It is, because you don't have much space up there. There's areas you just can't go into, and that's brief to you. When you go up there, certain areas you don't go across Potomac River because then you're into the prohibited area up there. We all have to take a little course from the FAA before we go up there, so you learn all the requirements that you have to do in order to fly in that area. It's called the special CIFRA, and there's a lot of restrictions and a lot of people you have to talk to before you go up in there, and it's busy. But the air traffic controllers up there really take care of us. The Golden Knights, we've done it so many times now. We know exactly who to call. We do a lot of off-site streamer drops now, instead of doing them right over there, and we kind of do it where we're out of the way for Reagan Airport, because they're coming right down the river, either coming southbound or they're taking off north and going up the river on the same side as just near the Pentagon.
So for those who don't understand what a streamer pass is, can you explain that and talk about the patterns? And
So what happens is we take off, we level off about 2,000 feet, and then we get in a position where we throw some crepe paper wind indicators out of the airplane. And then the jumpers, we have to circle those. So we generally do a left-hand turn because the door is on the left side. And the jumpers will look at those streamers and make some calculations on where they should do their release point. And so we have to get those in sight. We still have to maintain clearance from the prohibited areas up there in that area. And then circle those streamers until they're on the ground. Gives the jumpers an idea where they should release out of the airplane for the winds. And but you're talking to the air traffic controllers all the time up there. It's busy, and sometimes they'll say, "Hey, I need you to get out of the way for a minute," So, and we just do that because we got to be courteous up there. There's a lot of people, a lot of airlines coming in and out of that area.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. It just seems like a lot to manage. And
but one thing I will say is it's a joy to fly where you grew up, and because I know the area pretty well, in the different buildings that I've worked on and so on, and it's just kind of cool to fly in your own hometown.
Yeah, I'll bet. At one point in time, you're working on those buildings, and now you're flying over them, and that's incredible. Yeah. How do you handle stress? Do you have any coping strategies which help you manage stress and thrive in high pressure situations like flying over DC that you can share with us?
Yeah, I tend to try to keep my flying boring, and I don't want to get hyped up on anything. Just maintain calm, because that can be contagious to your flying partner. I used to be pretty stressed out sometimes, not to the point where I'm hauling or anything like that, but just feeling it, But I've learned to not worry so much about things I can't control. And that, especially in the maintenance world, because, I used to want to lose my mind sometimes with things that are going on, money and so on. But again, you're not in it by yourself. You just have to ask for help. And if, you just have to explain what's going on and keep the stress levels down. Prepare, do it early. So that's how I do it.
Right. Yeah. For me, preparation is one of the biggest aspects to that. And I was wondering if you have anything that where you help to control your symptoms physiologically, like any kind of breathing techniques or anything like that help calm you down.
I think for me, taking a walk really does a good job for me. I haven't been walking a whole lot lately because I'm getting over that injury. But as far as breathing, sometimes my watch tells me to breathe.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That kind of works, But I'm very good, and most aviators are they call it just compartmentalization. If you've got something going on over here, you can put it in the box, close the lid, focus on your flying. When you're on the ground, you're away from the airplane, then you can close that lid, open that other box, and deal with it. So that's what you have to do.
Yeah, that's great.
To learn how to do that. So
focus on whatever the priority is and manage that before try not to handle too many things all at one point in time. Yep. Would you mind sharing stories of some of your more stressful flying moments and tell us how you dealt with those situations?
Let me think of any. I think I guess weather is sometimes can be quite stressful. If you're trying to get someplace, there's thunderstorms all around you, or they've surrounded you, on non-forecasted. You use your equipment, your training, the radar, GPS, XM weather, and we've got all those tools now, So, but generally, I've been real lucky on my flying. Again, I've got listen to your team, your flying partner, and they might have a better way of doing something than you do. So listen, work it out, and take that direction as a team. So.
Yeah, that's a question that I'm going to have later on for you too, as it pertains to having a growth mindset and still learning regardless of your experience level.
Right.
Have you ever had anything that you've had to deal with, like an engine out in a helicopter or anything like that? Or you've had to auto rotate or?
Never had to auto rotate. I've had a hydraulic failure in a helicopter. It's a little bit stressful there because it's a helicopter needs the hydraulics. I was able to get on the ground. But you train. You train for it.
Right.
I've had to shut the engine down in the F-27.
Oh, really?
Our old C-131. I think I've had to shut it down twice for gearbox failures, compressors, no oil in the gearbox, so you get a red light, and the gearbox is attached by a drive shaft in that aircraft. You just simply shut the engine down and go through the checklist, and then set the power and find a place to land, declare an emergency and land. So I had one up in, I think, Milwaukee area one night, and one going into Shreveport, and just gearboxes. Never the engine problem. It was always something attached to it.
Oh, okay. So. Do you find that having a well-versed education and knowledge in maintenance and the way things work in the aircraft, do you find that helps you deal with those kind of situations?
Oh yeah, it's good to know. You have to know how things work pretty much. But in a generic situation, though, you have a checklist and you have immediate action emergency procedures that you have to know by memory, and then you back it up with a checklist and you verify it with the other pilot before you start moving things around. So you work as a team to get it shut down, start it up, so on. So,
well, thanks for sharing those with us. I appreciate it. I'd like to talk about one of the highlights that you've told me about before during your time with the Knights, and that was meeting George Bush Sr. Can you talk some about that?
He's a wonderful man and a wonderful family. Probably one of the highlights of my career was to be able to meet him and fly him with a few other people down in College Station in Texas there. And very, very decent man. I learned a lot. I went to his museum down there and read his letters when he was, shot down in Chichijima.
Wow.
it's just look at the family while we were together and listen to the grandchildren, dogging each other and laughing at each other and their tandem videos. And it was hilarious. But what a great time that was. And, George Bush Sr., during that event, raised money. The purpose of it on his birthday was to raise money for leukemia, a charity. And he did well with it, and there was a lot of people there. A lot of Chuck Norris was there. Gorbachev was there.
Oh, really?
Didn't get to meet him, but he was there. Chuck Norris jumped with us, Bush Sr., Britt Hume, some of the grandkids, one of the brothers. It was a good time.
Mike Elliott did some of those jumps.
Mike Elliott,
correct?
That's
yeah,
right.
He's he recently with his team now, All Veteran Group. They just went out to College Station to jump some of the grandkids, I believe, and some of the family out there.
Because I think there was a couple of them that might not have been old enough yet. So it was, but they had a good time. It was hot down there. The weather wasn't trying to cooperate a whole lot, but we got it done. And but he had a beautiful dinner for us. I've got a picture of myself with him that somebody else took, and we're talking about fishing because we,
you're talking about
our hands,
right?
Hands are out there. Yeah, I caught a striped bass this big, and I did ask one of the Secret Service people, "What's he like when he's fishing?" He says, "It's full throttle or no throttle." Really? He has the Fidelity 2 at the time we jumped him, and I think the Fidelity 2 is a fountain. It's a fountain fast boat. They're built here in North Carolina, in Washington, North Carolina. And but it's called Fidelities. They were all Fidelity 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was just looking at a picture, but he gave me a hat with Fidelity 2 on it. I thought that was
very
pretty
cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I remember it was either Mike Elliott or maybe it was, but I think he was talking about a story where he went out on the fishing boat, or he was talking about it, and he was talking about having more engines on his and, some of the other guys that some of his other friends or something like that. He was just kind of a competitor at heart.
He likes to go fast in the boat. That's what the guys have told me, so, but beautiful place up there, Kennebunkport, Maine. And I remember Barbara coming up to me while we were down there and saying, "Mr. Breeden, you are not wearing your sunblock," because I was getting sunburned, And so I had to square that away the next day.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet.
It was a good time. We had a great time.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a great time. And for those who don't know, George Bush Sr. was instrumental in helping the Golden Knights to get the newer team building that they're in now. And out of the old World War II barracks, and he was a great supporter of the team. And I think he came down for the opening. I was in, I think, the basic non-commissioned officer course at the time, so I wasn't able to, be there for the opening of the building. But I believe he came down, and there's some pictures of him in his jacket and his boots, which he's dedicated to the team and are now in the trophy cases down there on display.
Yep, he did come down, and I remember being there, and he did a little speech outside during the the commencement of the opening of the building. Mm-hmm. And one of the highlights was when he opened up his jacket and there was an American flag.
That's awesome.
Inside of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, that picture's there at team headquarters. Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your formation flying with Rob Holland on show site and maybe some others over the years. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Rob's he's just a professional. He's one of the best in the world. He flies a lot with Bill Stein and Ken Ryder, many others, and Mike Goulian. And most of the time they're flying formation on us, because it's just the maneuverability. The airplanes were the bigger airplanes, so we're just flying. Right. We just try to fly as smooth as we can, maintain altitude and airspeed, and those guys make us look better. They really do a good job. I just did a recent one here just recently over at Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh, really?
Rob and Bill were flying. Got some great video of that. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, anytime I see pictures or video of that, I'm just in awe.
And as you know, my first show was just back on the road was at Battle Creek after this Achilles tendon injury. So I got to see Rob and Bill, and I walked in the door, and they were like, "Ken, where have you been?" So it was good to see everybody.
Oh, that's great. That's really awesome. For those that don't know, those are they're flying highly maneuverable aerobatic aircraft, and it's just so cool to see them so close to Golden Knight aircraft, and that's awesome. And I guess sometimes they'll fly around with smoke. Some of the guys that have gotten out and are doing once the Knights are under canopy, they'll fly around them as part of the show.
They'll actually, to the point, if we're doing some shows that are a little bit lower altitude now, so it's like 6,000 feet, they'll come right up to us, fly formation, and as the jumpers exit the aircraft, they'll do a rapid descent around them with smoke, and then when the canopy opens, of course, they stay above the jumper at that point, but they actually follow those guys down. That's some crazy flying there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a high G. It's a lot of high G what they're doing there. So
yeah, it's exciting stuff. So if anybody wants to get out and, go see some of those shows, I'd highly suggest it.
That's right.
What have been some of your more memorable demonstration show site experiences?
They're all great. I remember one of my last shows when I was active duty. We went out to St. Louis, and we got to be up on stage not up on stage, but right in the front part of the crowd there to see Casey and the Sunshine Band. I thought that was pretty cool, you know. And this recent one here, they actually have programmed the day down for 4th of July here at Battle Creek just a couple weeks ago, and they had some neighbors at a lake all get together and invite us and the Thunderbirds over, and their crew members and everybody. Took a bunch of people water skiing. That was a down day. There was no air show that day, and then the following 2 days we did the air shows after that. And but the people that we meet out there and how things we get to do, and we're well fed. You name it. It's really awesome. So it's a blessing.
Yeah, my demonstration experience is limited, because I was on the competition team most of the time, but been on a few, and any chance that we got to, hang out or talk with any of the jet teams, the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds, it was always, a real treat just to, meet those guys and everybody else on the show circuit. It's just a really cool experience. And I remember one of the highlights I had was jumping into Pax River out of your aircraft, and then the flyby you did with the Fokker was just incredible. And it's one of my favorite pictures that I've got is us in the lineup with you flying by in the Fokker.
Yeah, hopefully we get invited back up to Pax River. We haven't done that one in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Another good one memory is Brunswick, Maine. That was a fantastic air show. It's just because of the beauty up there. It's beautiful flying, But everywhere we go, Dayton, Ohio, Chicago, Air and Sea, all the bigger shows are great, but so are all the smaller ones. It's a joy. Get out there and talk to people and get to fly your airplane.
Yeah, it's such an awesome way for the Knights and the Army and sometimes the Navy Leapfrogs, join in. Or the British Red Devils, to do some of those shows. But it's just such a phenomenal way for, the military to, be able to make connections, with the civilian population.
Yeah, that's right.
It's incredible. I asked my dad if he wanted me to ask you any questions for him, and one of them is to ask you to pick 3 of your most memorable GK characters from road trips, like some of the more entertaining guys. Or
oh my, Billy Van Solen. Top notch.
Yeah.
If you need a laugh, you're going to get one.
Oh yeah.
Rich Chandler.
Yeah.
Kenny Burns together.
Yeah, Kenny Burns. Yeah.
Those two together could have made big money just doing a comedian act. So, who else? I mean, many others, but those 3 stand out. Always loved hearing Billy Van Solen speak to the crowd, and for 2 or 3 years after Billy left the demonstration teams, people would always say, where's Billy?
Yeah, he's just
people
a larger than life,
just
kind of guy.
Funny and did a good job. Was a great leader, and they stick out in my mind there.
Yeah, he was just a big personality. He was a showman, you know what I mean? But also had the substance,
That's
well.
right. Yeah. exactly.
Yeah, awesome guy. I was wondering when I was writing that question down, I was kind of wondering who you might say, and a couple of those guys were.
Another one, Tom Welgos used to.
Oh yeah,
he was a good trainer. Karen Morrison.
Yeah.
When I first came to the team, we're doing style runs, not style runs, but just accuracy. So I think we're going 2,500 feet, not very high. I was in the porter. I was new on the team. They released me to fly pretty early, and so I came around, and Tom Welgos was kind of a big guy. He's kind of a world champion competitor. And he says to me, he says, Ken, Mr. Breeden, how long does it take to do a accuracy run? I said, I don't know, about 15 minutes. Karen got to the side, took me to the side, and said, Ken, Mr. Breeden, they don't want an airplane ride. So I got it. The lights came on,
Tight turns.
Turns, get them over the target, land, put them back in.
Yeah. Oh, man, I can remember times when I was with the style and accuracy team, landing and then packing furiously as fast as I could, just sweating in the hot sun, trying to be packed by the time you landed, just so that we could get back on and, hot load the aircraft. But
the lights came on, and Tom was like, okay, Mr. Breeden, you can slow it down now.
That's a great impression. I recently saw him at the wind tunnel at Paraclete XP. He came up, and I didn't recognize him at first because he got a big gray beard. But
next time you see him, tell him I'll never forget him.
I will. He says he's going to be going back to the tunnel more often and going out to Rayford because he wants to. He wants to get recurrent, so he's kind of going through some recurrency training because he hasn't jumped in years, I guess. But he still looks great, and he's still Tom. He's like, hey, you remember me? I can't do his impression as well as you can, but I was like, oh, yeah, you're a hard person to forget.
I have more. He said, he says, on a style run, you're at 7,500 feet. You're doing tight turns. He says, you see that big orange thing up there? That'd be called the sun. Don't put the camera in the airplane between the sun behind you guys because I can't see you.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he had a way with words.
He cut me no slack.
No, he didn't cut anybody any slack. Yeah. That's it's kind of the way of the team at the time. I'm not sure if the culture's still the same, but I would imagine it's got an element of that for sure. When I was going through some of your pictures on Facebook, I came across one. It was you taking a selfie in the cockpit, I think, and the caption read, "Happiness is teamwork." Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's probably when I was getting back in the airplane. Recently, I've had a lot of, this team, the entire parachute team, plus my peers in the pilot pool down at Team 6. It takes a lot to say, hey, we want you back in the cockpit. After 8 months of not flying, and it's a confidence thing. So, but I've had the encouragement from several people to say, hey, let's give it a shot. Again. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I ruptured my Achilles tendon last November 23, very debilitating injury, and but because of our team accepting that I'm going to be okay, has given me the resilience to get better. And I actually made a decision, back in January, February, I'm not getting better quick enough. I'm not going to be able to fly again. I'm not going to fly again. And then I got through and I started feeling it, but every 3 weeks I'd feel a little better, a little better balance, able to do this now, still limping a little, and then I rolled up my sleeves and I finished the deck that I was working on last November, and that was kind of my test. A little bit of physical therapy too, because I had to do it, practice coordination, try not to hurt myself again. And
right,
so
I'm
on.
sure you're carrying big pieces of wood around so often, and having to balance yourself with that.
But, June 1st, I think I went to the flight surgeon and say, when I went to the flight doc in May, he says, what do you think? You're looking pretty good. Are you ready? I said, Doc, I'm not. He said, really? He says, what's the problem? I says, I don't think I could help anybody out of that airplane if I needed to right now. He says, good point.
So that was the big measurement you were using.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because I had talked to another individual, a senior ranking Air Force general, and that's what he told me on the phone. He said, Ken, he says, we were talking about flying again, and I gave him a call because he had ruptured his tendon here last year as well, and I know him through a mutual friend. And he says, you got to be able to get your crewmates out of the airplane. Think about that. And it hit me hard, So that's what I told the doc. But a month and a half later, I felt a lot better. So, I said, I need to try. And then Joanne, my ATKey, you know her down at maintenance there. She said, Ken, if you don't try, you're going to retire, and you're always going to question whether you should have done it or not. And I went home that day, and I said, I'm going to try. So came in the next day with an upslip from the doc, and Will Byro over there, Mr. Byro, says, hey, we're getting you in the sim. He got me in the sim a week later, and a week after that, I was in the actual airplane, and it felt really good, So
that's awesome.
I came right back. I mean, it was intense. The sim was intense, but that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I made them, hey, I need you to test this foot here. So give you the engine failure where I got to push the rudder with that,
I was going to ask
extended
if it was
periods of
intense
time,
physically.
So, for a long period of time with an engine failure until you land, so because you're going to declare and, everything's in real time in the sim. So, but that prepared me to get back into the actual aircraft. It really felt good, and it's been awesome.
I was going to ask you some of these questions later on, but we'll keep talking about it now. How did it feel for you when you got back into the cockpit and you fired up the aircraft and you taxied down the runway and took off into the wild blue?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was with Ed Skemper, and very, very experienced, calm instructor pilot. And, there's no gotchas. It's just, we're going to go fly. We're going to see how you feel. And we went out and did a pilot flight eval, So I had to do all maneuvers, stalls, or, stall work, slow flight, everything you have to do on a check ride. Single engine approaches, engine failure after takeoff, or, V1 cut, they call it, just as you're leaving the ground. So we did all that work, and, it just felt awesome, And if I was a little rusty on something, you let me do it again.
Nice. So I'll bet that was an incredible moment. I remember talking to you, maybe it was weeks beforehand, and you were still in doubt as to whether you get back to flying or not. And I'll bet that was a very difficult time for you, because of your love for flying and how long you've been doing it. And so I'll bet there were a lot of...
what you do kind of defines you.
Right.
So, when you can't, I talk to a lot of jumpers that have had injuries, hey, how did you get through this? What was your feelings in 3 months in, 4 months in, because I'm not going to say you get depressed, but you sometimes you just kind of like are a little down in the dumps a little bit, because you'd really like to be participating,
You absolutely do. I had a total hip replacement where I had, similar thoughts.
Yeah. So you just kind of like, man, doggone it, why'd it happen to me? So, but it did. And, with family, my wife and my girls and the team got through this thing,
And then it also limits you, not only flying, but just like you said, activities with your family and fishing and stuff like that. So it's
everything.
Right.
When this first happened, I mean, it's everything's hard. Even brushing your teeth because you have to lean against the counter. I mean, you're landing on a crutch. You're trying to, brush your teeth. It's just everything.
How did it happen?
I was pushing something very heavy, and it was on. I was pushing a hot tub. It was empty, of course, but I had it on 4x4s with some PVC pipe under it, U-tube, and it got stuck in one spot. So I just pushed on it kind of hard, and then I pushed on it hard again, and it popped.
Oh, man.
Just right then and there. Just like Dre Greenlaw at the Super Bowl. He kind of pushed off his leg when he ran onto the field during the Super Bowl.
Right. Just enough.
Just enough to pop the tendon. So, it's just the biggest tendon in your body. And but I did it, and but it's recovering, so it's good.
Yeah, but what a marvelous comeback story.
Yeah, but I mean,
awesome.
and now I mean, I feel whole again, and I feel like I can participate, and everybody's letting me do that. Again, the Army and everybody that's associated around me has just supported me the whole time. My boss, Captain Giggy, all the pilots, been good to me.
It's you seem a lot happier. You always have a smile on your face, but you seem a lot happier now that you're flying again. I'm so great to see it. I want to be respectful of your time, so I've only got I have another series of questions if you have time for it, and I'd like to ask you. What was it like transitioning from the C-31 Fokker to the C-147?
It was great. I mean, I've always wanted to fly the C-147's Dash 8. It's very similar to another airplane I've flown, it was a de Havilland Dash 7. The Dash 7 has 4 engines, but the cockpit layout's very similar. So, but one thing we do, all of us notice this, we talk about all the time. The F-27, great airplane. Had to plan a little bit more. Wasn't quite as fast. Water methanol injection, and it's pretty noisy. The Dash 8 is quiet. I mean, you could take your headsets off really in the cockpit, and you have to raise your voice a little bit, but you'd never do that in the Twin Otter or the F-27. We're finding that flying that airplane's much less fatiguing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When we're out at Laurinburg all day with that, we come back a little tired. Where the other two aircraft, you've had a good day. You've got a good tired going on.
And what causes that difference?
We think it's noise, and it's also air conditioning.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have the heat so much on you. But
the heat will definitely take it out of you.
But even in the wintertime, it's that airplane is it's fast, it's quiet, the vibration is less, and it's a wonderful platform.
I love the sound of those Rolls-Royce engines and the Fokker.
Yeah, we missed that.
Yeah, that was cool hearing the whine of those things. Anytime it pulled up, right. I would just get excited, get goosebumps. And I had the opportunity. It's been about 5 years ago now. Shortly after they were retired, to see one of the Fokkers at, I believe it was the Pima Air and Space Museum, and it was out on display in the middle. It was kind of an emotional moment. Yeah. Not too many people were out there, and I just went out and spent some time with the old bird. And
definitely, I know that emotion too. Me and Mr. Reiner and Sergeant Runyon, we turned those aircraft in. So we turned that one in at the boneyard there.
Wow, you flew it all the way out there?
Yeah, we flew it out there. Myself, Frank Reiner, and Sergeant Runyon. And we got out of the airplane, and the gentleman outside, the line guy, was like, please don't tell me these are going over there. And he was pointing at the Bonehart. I said, they are. There were tears in our eyes,
I'll bet.
But we've got a picture of that. We've got a picture of us all three saluting the aircraft. We had him take some picture at the tail.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool. Got over that, put it in the museum. We taxied it over because one of the things we had to do before it went into the boneyard was they defueled the aircraft and they put motor oil in the fuel tanks.
Oh, man.
About 20, 30 gallons. You actually start the aircraft back up. It'll run on it.
Wow,
It
really?
ran. Smoked a little bit, but it ran good.
Wow.
Of course, you got some jet fuel in there to get it going, but
right.
Once it's hot, it ran on it. It preserves it.
Okay.
It's for preservative. And then, but as soon as we got there, the Pima Museum was over. Their, what do they call it? The people that run the museum.
Oh, like the curator.
The curator came over and she said, hey, that's coming over here. That's not going to stay over there.
Oh, good.
So it's over at the museum.
Yeah.
607.
Yeah.
And then the other one's in back in the Netherlands. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, no.
It's still flyable.
Wow. Nice.
Stories on that, too, if you want them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
please.
If you remember, it stayed over at Laurinburg. Remember seeing it on the ground at Laurinburg? Yeah. So it stayed over there about a year. And Mike Deek kind of did some first-line maintenance on it for the company that bought it. They bought it through a GSA buy. They got all the parts for that aircraft. The company's called VNCE. And Paul Regnan he's a Netherlands native. He kind of headed it up. And it sat over there for about a year. And Troy Emig would go over there, CW3 Emig. He left the Army and he went to fly civilian, but he was working for them a little bit, just running the airplane there for a few weeks. But the following year, this is during COVID, just the beginning of COVID when it started getting heavy. They were calling me every other week, begging me to ferry the airplane to the Netherlands. I was like, I can't do it. I can't. I've got duties here with the parachute team.
Right.
Well, can you take it to Georgia for us? And I said, yes. So I actually ended up ferrying that aircraft to Georgia so they could do some maintenance on it. Did about a year's worth of maintenance on it, or 6 months of maintenance. And then I drove back down in my truck and cranked it up, said it's ready to fly.
Wow.
So, but it cranked up after a year. I got a waiver from the FAA, and I got an ADS B waiver, which was no big deal. But it fired right up. The only thing that didn't work on the airplane was right old pressure gauge. I tapped it one time, it came right up to normal. And the other pilot that flew with me, his name is Alan Nollmeyer, super nice guy. He's in his early 70s, hadn't flown a Fokker for 10 years. He flew over at Mountaineer Cargo. He got in the aircraft. I said, just read the checklist, man. So because he wasn't familiar with our cockpit. He had flown an older F-27. Okay. But he had a grin on his face. And
I bet that was a special moment.
As soon as we took off, I gave him the controls. He flew all the way down there.
Wow.
And then I landed the airplane, and then it was a good time. We're good friends now. And he actually helped the gentleman that flew it to the Netherlands. They did it in 3 days.
Wow.
And it was the gentleman that flew the airplane was the original delivery pilot for the Golden Knights that brought it here in 1985.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us. I didn't know any of that. Yeah, that's great.
Like I say, I get in trouble with all these stories.
No, it's great. Please, if you have anything like that for anything that we're talking about, please don't hesitate. What's your favorite aircraft to fly and why?
Wow. I would say it's Dash 8 right now, but Twin Otter's close second. Yeah. Because, I've got Twin Otter time. Don't have as much Dash 8 time as I have Twin Otter time, so it's a toss-up. But I love flying that Dash 8 right now. Twin Otter lands nice.
Right.
Dash 8 sometimes Ken has to work on a little bit. Sometimes they move the runway up and down on me. So
try to keep it interesting for you. Yeah. What about your least favorite?
Probably the Casa 212.
Oh, really?
Over at USASOC when I was working over there after I retired from the Army for about 8 months. But it was okay. I liked it. It was a nice airplane. But I didn't have a lot of time in it, so I wasn't real comfortable in it. That's the only reason. It's a good airplane. Gotcha. Good aircraft.
People who have an amount of experience similar to yours in any endeavor seem to have a growth mindset. We were talking about this earlier. And are open to new ideas and ways of doing things. Are you still learning new things, even with your high level of experience?
I learn something new every day. And my ears are open to all of our young people because they have stepped up to the plate as they come to them. Few of us were a little skeptical of the youth that we're getting in there, low-time pilots. But we need them, and they have done a good job. My peers amaze me, so I learn something new every day. So they might not know it, but my ears always perked. Okay, what do I not know today? So credit's due where it should be.
Right? Yeah, that's really awesome, and I'm sure that's why you're still doing what you're doing because you have that mindset.
That's right. Even I've asked team leaders and current team leaders, hey, what do you think about me doing this? What do you think about coming? Some of them said, Mr. Breeden, you don't owe anything. You just take it easy. Some of them, we never complain when you're up there. So I take that as a compliment.
For sure.
So, but my ears are open every day to learn, and I still call my go-to Dave Clay. He's retired, but he's going to tell you to your face.
No, yeah. Mr. Clay
he's
awesome.
He's going to make sure that you've got his ear. So
right.
So I do call him once in a while for advice too.
Nice. I'd like to have him here and have a conversation with him as well. He'd be great.
He'd be fun. It'd be fun to listen to. If you went to his retirement ceremony, when he retired from the Army,
I was there.
It was fantastic.
It
was fun, funny, and he had people there that that helped him along the way too to become a warrant officer and so on. So,
do you have any other mentors in aviation throughout your career that you'd like to mention, and what were the qualities you admired in them most?
For sure, you had Mr. Foyt's, and he was a DAC in Berlin when I was there. Basically taught me how to fly an airplane. He would holler at me, but he was a good man, and he's passed away. But he was a GS employee over there for the Berlin Brigade Flight Detachment. High time, Chinook guy, but flew every fixed wing that you could think of. Just came out of the Special Forces arena when he was a soldier, and then he became a warrant officer, then a DAC. Lester Foyt is his name.
Wow.
Probably top. Another one right behind him is Daryl Pope. He was another pilot in Berlin that I really remember. But, every assignment I've had, Norm Splitzdozer, civilian guy in Kwajalein. Super, he was their chief pilot with the Dash 7s over there in Kwaj. Trying to think of some other folks. Tony Pay back in Alaska, good guy. So bunches, you can have all kinds of mentors and so on.
Right.
So.
What were some of the qualities that you admired in them the most?
Consistency, and just good friends and instructors and so on. Trying to think of some people here. Al Aber, always looked up to him. Consistent. You always knew where he was going to be coming from. So, that's what I look for.
And I'm sure that's those are some of the qualities that you continue to pass on as a mentor to others.
Try to. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now I'd like to talk about a more somber topic, and that's dealing with tragedy as an aviator. Unfortunately, in the sport and in aviation in general, it has its inherent risks, and sometimes we don't always manage those accordingly. We have accidents, unfortunately. Fortunately, they are usually few and far between. But one of the other questions my father wanted me to ask, he wanted to know about Team 6 flight crew's first reactions to accidents which resulted in loss of a Golden Knight team member who left their plane on the team member's final jump. What are your first reactions like to that, or how does Team 6 deal with it? Loss of that nature is difficult for everyone, but how does Team 6 deal with that as a unit?
As you said, there are risks, and we all know it, and we try to mitigate not having an accident all the time. Of course, we had a really bad one in 2002 with Plas Porter. We lost the airplane and the pilot. And
that was Butch Timmons.
Butch Timmons, yeah. And, it was shocking. First thing that went through my mind was, of course, my gosh, we've lost a guy. Second thing that went through my mind, I hope my airplane didn't let him down as a maintenance officer. And, it was a midair collision was what happened there. So, tough few days. But you have to grasp reality. Time heals. It doesn't heal all the way because you always remember, I remember flying home from Yuma, and we were so vigilant looking out the window because we were terrified, at least I was, of having a midair. Because at that time we didn't have traffic collision avoidance systems, stuff like that.
Okay.
It was all visual. Find somebody or radar or ATC, say, hey, you got traffic out your right, you're looking. Sometimes you don't see all those airplanes, as you know.
Right.
You'd think you'd be able to see them. Sometimes they're difficult to find. But with pilots and our jumpers and so on, people that we've lost here throughout all the years, you have to reel it in and compartmentalize again, grieve a little, and drive on. It's time to drive on, because things can happen.
Usually there's a safety stand down of some, like, the Army has its protocols that you have to go through. But I think I was asking more of psychologically how you handle it. And it's, if I'm understanding you correctly, that's taking a short grieving period, but also the team still has a mission and you need to refocus on that and get back on the horse. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And like you say, you reflect and you dig deep and you say, what have I done similar to that? I can't do that anymore. Or you reflect and you make sure that you understand how it happens so you can keep it from happening again.
Makes you double down on
You double
safety
down on things. Yeah,
right,
you sure do. You take another really good look at things and get reeled back in, so.
The other thing, one of the other incidents I remember, it was my first year on the team, is when the Fokker stalled. And I think there was some if you can describe, kind of what happened there and what the team learned about. I don't know if it was that airframe specifically, but it was definitely things that were put in place, SOPs as to how many people could be aft the center of gravity and that type of thing. But I'll let you explain that.
Yeah, basically what happened that day probably, and I wasn't there. I was at Simmons Army Airfield flying C-12s when that happened, and I did know both pilots. I knew Bob and I knew Major V. And they were both good acquaintances of mine at that time because I'd see them in the hangar all the time. I wasn't on the Golden Knights then, but what happened in that situation is lack of situational awareness is basically what happened. They were trying to get a big weight done. The culture of the team at the time, we can do it all.
Right.
So it's okay. They highly confident, highly proficient jumpers and pilots and so on. So basically, at that time, too many people got near that back door, wanting to rush that door, and basically the pilots ran out of forward column, and they couldn't push the airplane over, and it rolled over on its back. Basically, did a split S from pretty high altitude, and luckily they were able to recover that aircraft. They got it back right side up and sorted it out. And after that, hey, let's go back to planning here. What can we do to keep this from happening? And they put some lines on the floor at that point. And said,
I remember that before they were painted, they were taped there. Yeah.
Right. So basically, they put it all down there, and again, you retrain and you say, okay, everybody, this could have been really bad. From now on, only this many people can go back there, and only this many people can be on this line, and everybody else got to be forward. So I'm sure Mr. Deke had a lot to do with figuring out that CG and where those lines should be painted. So, you live and learn.
Right, for sure. Yeah, that was back in 1994. That was my first first full year with the team, and I went out to. We had gotten done training out at Desert One, and I wanted to go out and watch the demonstrators at Cox Field because it was my first year on the team, and I watched it. I remember seeing it. I remember seeing the, you see the black, bottom skin of the aircraft, and then I saw it like glint white. I was like, that looks weird. It looks like right. It just rolled, and then it was headed straight down. And talking to Major V and Bob Giacone later that night in the barracks, they were talking about how they were. They had their feet on the dash, right? And they're pulling back on the yokes as hard as they could. And if I remember this correctly, they were saying that the design of the aircraft shouldn't have allowed them to recover that, like the wings should have folded up or something. But anyway, it worked out, and everyone was fine. Yeah, so it sounds like somebody's coming in the door here. But
deal.
But yeah, fortunately that all worked out, and there were only some minor injuries, but there were some, there's some heroics that came out of that as well.
That's
I think there were some people that helped others out of the aircraft because it was a situation where some people were pinned to the inside of the aircraft from the G-forces.
If you remember, the crew chief's name was Leo Aubin, and Leo was pinned into an overhead rack, which is the equivalent of the overhead baggage area. And in that airplane, it was all just upper grates. It's just a long grate system. There's no opening doors or anything. He was holding on for dear life up in the top of the airplane. The centrifugal force was keeping him pegged against the ceiling.
Yeah. Fortunately, that worked out the way it did, and we've learned a lot of lessons from it, and have moved on. It's evident to me, as I'm sure it's evident to all Golden Knights, that you care deeply about each member of the organization. How do you handle loss, like we were talking about earlier, personally, and how are you able to refocus getting back in the air after incidents of that nature?
Well, going through the team, our team and our chain of command does a wonderful job with collecting everybody up and making sure and looking around, make sure everybody's collectively okay. I've always taken that in stride and participated in the memorials. I keep the brochures on that person. I read it, and it gets me through. Okay, I remember him for this or her or whatever, and again, I go through the memorial process, think, take a down day or few, and then get back on the horse. That's how I do it. And it helps me to get through it because I know we have to drive on.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I do something similar, saving the brochures from the memorial ceremonies and that type of thing. Now I'd like to move on to a lighter topic, and that's talking about some of your hobbies. We've talked a bit about your deep sea fishing and other fishing, and you also like classic cars. You're a classic car enthusiast, and you have a Mustang. Can you talk something about that?
I have an old 65 Mustang that I got. Part of the deal, I bought that for Wendy, my wife, when she was in college, because we got married her senior year of college. So she needed a car. I was in Alaska because I spent the first 6 months. She had to finish out her senior year. So part of the deal from her dad was you need to get her a car, and I did. So got her the old 65. She drove that all over the place and still have it. But a lot of us down at Team 6 are motorheads. We work on stuff, motorcycles, cars, old stuff, engines, try to make it run. So that's definitely a hobby. Got that from my dad. My dad was always, didn't have all the money to put him in the shop all the time. You fixed everything yourself, So it rubbed off on me, I think I took my mother's sewing machine apart when I was 2 years old. She
really
put that back together, and I did.
When you were 2?
I think I got it back together somehow. Wow. Yes, I did something to it. And then, but it's always been around with me. Mechanical aptitude is good. So lure making, I was doing that for a while. Hobbies, I love building stuff. The carpenter trade has always been a good, job ethics, I guess, work ethic. I worked around a lot of people, hardworking people. And, part of the reason I left that trade was I saw these 75-year-old men still working because they couldn't retire.
Oh, right.
So I started thinking about that when I was really young. And my dad was always like, you need to check out the service, go to college,
Right.
So college was great, but it was great after I had matured a little bit because I did finish my degree. I got my bachelor's in pro aero from Embry-Riddle, but I just wasn't ready and mature enough to study in the beginning.
As I'm sure most people of that age aren't.
I was good at what I wanted to do.
Right. Yeah, I was the same way. But the Army's definitely got some great opportunities.
That's right.
Definitely take care of you if you put in the time and service, and you do a good job. So
yeah.
I would like to talk some about your military retirement and your civilian transition. As it is for most of us, your retirement from active duty was a deeply emotional one. Can you explain why and what it is that you miss most about being on active duty?
Well, one of the things is it was a tough decision to retire, but I was very lucky in that I got to come back after retirement. And I went to work at USASOC for about 8 months, and then when I got a call saying, "Hey, we'd like you to come over here as a maintenance officer. You think you could do it as a GS?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." Because parachute team is my comfort level. I had time with that, and USASOC was a great opportunity for me. I loved flying over there, but this one came up, and I didn't expect it. But I jumped on it. So, I got to basically sit in the same desk I retired out of. I will say this though, when I did retire, maintenance is a heavy load on your shoulders. I remember the feeling the day after I retired saying, wow, I'm free, but you soon get bored and
right.
want
that sense of purpose.
You got to have that purpose and that stress level a little bit to keep performing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was good, but I'm in the same desk I was in, after I retired from the parachute team.
So you went, you flew, or you took the USASOC assignment after retiring. What was that like for you?
It was great. I had good friends over there. I flew the Porter over there, because our Golden Knight porters went over to the USAR flight detachment. So I worked out at the Sears School, did a lot of Robin Sage missions out there with the SF community, a lot of night flying, a lot of bundle drops, a lot of static line drops at St. Mary-Glise out of the Casa 212.
Nice.
And it was good. It was good. And worked with George Powell over there, a good friend of mine. He was a maintenance officer for Golden Knights back in the 90s. And because when he retired, I took his job. And I just talked to him yesterday. We keep in touch.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And please tell him I say hello if you talk to him again soon.
Sure will, yeah.
And then how did the opportunity come to get back to the Knights after that? They basically wanted to convert the position to a GS position. And so they put the word out that they're going to do it. I went on USA Jobs and did the resumes and all that stuff. And, I was fortunate enough to get chosen. And the team's fortunate to have you. It's, yeah. Well, I think, unless you have anything else that, you'd like to add, I think, that pretty much covered everything I wanted to talk about.
The only thing I can do to cap everything over is it's incredible what opportunities I've had. My bosses have allowed me to fail without destroying me, and I've been able to recover and do better. And the Army has given me the privilege to take an airplane that costs a lot of money with another person and a whole bunch of people in the back and go to work. And, I've never missed a paycheck. It's been good to me. And my family is pro-America, and it's really something. So, but I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's been a huge honor, and I just want to publicly thank you and thank everyone at Team 6 for doing the job that they do. A lot of times you guys aren't in the limelight. It's mostly the jumpers, but we definitely wouldn't be able to do what we do without you guys. And I remember when I was over with the Knights, I was just always so confident because I knew that everyone was so competent and so good at what they did, over there in the aviation section, and there was never any doubt in my mind as to the quality of the maintenance or anything going on with the aircraft and the quality of the aviators. And, it was just an honor and a pleasure, and it's been an honor having you on. I really appreciate it.
Well, I do, one last thing just to, my maintenance guys over there, our maintenance people, when you think about it, I think I've got about 7,300 hours of Golden Knight time. That's a lot of takeoffs and landings. Thousands. Maybe 2.5, 3, 2 landings per hour.
Wow.
So you think 15,000 landings? I know it's more than that. But the guys that work on our airplanes, when I think about this, I can't thank them enough, because that many takeoffs and landings off the ground, come back, go see my family. It's pretty impressive. Got a great supervisor over there. He's a great chief.
Yeah, great guy.
He's passionate, he's dedicated, he's hard. He tells me what's on his mind. I do the best I can to keep those guys safe. Hats off to my mechanics.
Yeah, definitely. So much respect.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.